Thank you so much for doing this. For those of you who don't know, I'd say February is a very important month when it comes to Japanese American history, with Executive Order 9066, right? The internment order being signed on February 19th of 1942. And of course, a year later, the 442nd Infantry Regiment being activated in 1943. For our audience members who are not aware, Diane Tanouye here is Ted Tanouye's niece, the first grandchild of Ted Tanouye's father. And Ted Tanouye is the only Medal of Honor recipient from the city of Torrance, California. Today, we've invited her on for the anniversary of Executive Order 9066 to discuss her uncle's legacy, internment, the 442nd, and really just be given the floor to talk about anything she likes to. So thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
So we've spoken before, and you mentioned to me that your paternal grandfather came here in 1903.
Correct.
And that is, you said, the furthest back of anyone you know.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, he came over when he was 17 years old.
Okay.
By himself.
What was his
legally, Nikuma.
Okay.
And I asked Gail Morgan, who knows a lot about the Torrance history, and I asked what year her family came, and it was 1905. I knew that Louis' family came, Louis Zamperini, came in 1919.
You knew the Zamperinis.
And that's the year that my uncle was born. And I saw John's podcast, and he said his family had been here over 100 years. So my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, had been here over 120 years.
Wow.
Right, since 1903.
What was his name?
Nikuma.
Right, Nikuma. And so 1903, and then which part of Japan did they come from?
They came from southern Japan in Kuraoka.
Okay.
Fukuoka. I'm sorry, Fukuoka.
And what would you say those, from your knowledge, what was kind of that first generation, that Issei generation like?
They were law-abiding. They were humble. They were hardworking. And they carried their traditional Japanese culture. And
the profession they did in Japan, did that change when they came here?
Yes, because my grandfather, I heard, was a silkworm farmer in Japan. But when he came out here...
Not a lot of silkworms out here, I assume.
Well, I know somebody whose husband raises it, and so that his wife is a teacher, and so she brings it in and shows her students. But I haven't heard it, anybody else. I just heard my father tell me. My father was the second eldest son. He just told me that his father was a silkworm farmer in Japan. So I don't know what my grandfather was looking for when he came over here besides, earning a better living.
And what did they end up doing when they came?
They end up initially as a strawberry field,
farmer.
Right, farmers.
Would you say that was pretty typical for Japanese
I have
families
no idea.
that came to the South Bay? Because there's been a few, right, historically that have existed.
Well, I just knew that there was strawberry farming in Gardena. And all I knew was
West High used to be a strawberry patch too, if I remember.
Really?
I think so.
Interesting.
If I know the history of my school correct.
And so I heard that they grew produce, and my mother said that my father's family was a little bit more well off than her family because she said they sold it to Safeway. And I don't know when that came about.
So you said your uncle was born 1919. And tell me what you know about his generation and, obviously your father and then your uncles and all of that. Let's start with kind of growing up. What have you heard?
So my father only mentioned that he was a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest, and that he went to Italy and that he died there. So that's all I knew because I had found his photo. I guess the government issued photo. It was in a drawer where other photos were. And I said, I didn't know.
It's the one they always use in the city events and
so
things
he
like
looks
that,
like
right?
my
Of him in the
father.
uniform.
Yeah, right. And so he and my father look alike, I think. But my uncle, the youngest that was living at the time, he said they don't look alike. But I told my mother, I said, oh, I didn't know Daddy was in the Army. She said he wasn't. And she goes, oh, that's your father's eldest brother. So he is actually the second born of the family. My grandmother had a set of twins that died at birth, I think. And so my father's favorite story is the doctor told my grandfather that she almost died and not to have any more, babies. And so my dad said he fooled the doctor because he had 6 more. And so my father's the second eldest, and there's 1 sister and 4 other brothers. So my father says I'm thinking he thinks the U.S. government, they took the best. So they took Ted in World War II, and the youngest, Yuki, died in the Korean War.
What is the age difference? It's 4 brothers, you said, right?
Right.
What was the age gap between?
I think my father was 2 years younger than Ted, and I think the sister was 1 to 2 years younger than that, and then there was another brother. He was probably 2 years younger than her. And then Isao, the one that owned the Gardena Body Shop that most people associate our family name with, he must have been like 1 or 2 years younger. And then
So all pretty relatively
yeah,
close
they're
in
all real
age.
close. So it's, to me it was really hard for that age span. I think it was 15 years for those 6 kids. So Yuki was the youngest. And Ted was the perfect son. He, was very respectful and obedient to his parents. He did well in school, sports, academics. He worked hard, never got in trouble. My father was the one that always got in trouble. So
There's always one, right?
yeah, that's my father. And my claim to fame is probably my uncle Ted, but we didn't know anything about him until the upgrade of the medal.
Okay, in 2000, right, under President Clinton.
So I really didn't even follow that, but the middle brother's wife said that she had a friend that lived in the South Bay, and she saved all of the Daily Breeze articles. So there was a lot of uproar because the city or the alumni, I don't remember which, but wanted to name his school after my uncle. So Arlington...
It was Arlington Elementary, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and so it's very famous, even though it's no longer Arlington, right? It's Van Ness. But there was a lot of uproar of changing the name. And I had overheard that at my son's Japanese school one day, and the mothers were talking, and I said, oh, that's my uncle. And because I went by my married name at my son's school. And they said, well, if we would have known if it was your uncle, it would have been a different story. But she said, they didn't even know who he was. So no one really, I think, knew about Ted Tanouye.
Do you find it kind of shocking that people don't know the only Medal of Honor recipient?
Yes, and so I bring it up to people, and especially parents who worked at where I worked, and I said, oh, so does your daughter or son, did they see Citizen Tanouye? Because it's supposed to be required but optional in all U.S. history classes and government classes. And they said, well, let me check, and then they'd come back and say, no, they didn't see it. So I have a financial advisor who is almost 12 months or 11 months older than my son. He said he did not see it at school, and he went to South High.
It's a really good movie, by the way. I saw it maybe about a week ago for the first time, and it was everyone kept saying oh, you need to watch it. It's a very good documentary. It's very well put together.
Yes, and so I followed the film festivals, and so my son kept saying, how much or how many times do we have to see this, Mom? And I said, I want to give them support. So we went as far south as San Diego and as far north as Santa Clarita. And so we would just, wherever I heard about it, or Robert Horstein would tell me, the director, and we'd be there. And they would always be surprised to see us there.
So going back to Ted's life story, right? You said the Issei generation was doing farming, right? Strawberry farmers. And I know you said that you didn't really hear too much until the Medal of Honor upgrade.
Well, because I asked my father about him. I said, I saw the photo, and he would just say, "Oh, my older brother was in the Army, and he died."
And he wouldn't really say anything after that.
No, he really didn't say anything. But I think like I said, he was the perfect older. Well, you know, like there's
like the elder son that helps take care of the family.
Right, and the eldest son is supposed to be the one that watches out for the younger ones and the one who's more responsible. And so my father did say Ted was very responsible.
So, and also he went to Torrance High, right?
He also went to Torrance Elementary School.
Torrance Elementary School.
Right, and so
where did he go to middle school?
No, I heard through Gail Morgan that there was no middle school. It was even the elementary school. Everything was on one campus.
Okay.
And so
so Torrance Elementary and then Torrance High used to be
all
connected.
Together, right.
And he went from elementary school to Torrance High.
And so I think they didn't want to change the name of Torrance Elementary School because it's the original elementary school.
And then obviously Torrance High and all of that.
Right.
What would you say those high school years were like for Ted? He was, to the best you know. Because he was what, class of 38, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So he lettered in baseball, he lettered in football. I think he played probably what you might say B football, and then he was also in junior varsity. And he also did track, and he was in the Key Club, and he was in the Japanese Club, and the Future Farmers of America Club. So he was very active.
And through all of this, obviously still helping take care of the family and everything. Wow. Sophomore class president, apparently, according to my notes.
Yes.
I just wanted to check that.
Yes. Yes.
And he graduates in 1938.
Right.
That's the same year as Louis Zamperini, right?
No, Louis graduated 2 years before.
Okay, he's 2 years older.
Right. So Louis was still in high school when he ran to compete for the Olympics.
Right, 1936.
Because I think he was held
in
back.
Berlin.
Right, and I think he was held back a year or so. So when I would always do my speeches at work, I would always do it either on Louis or I'd do it on my uncle. And someone said, oh, wow, were they friends? I said, I highly doubt it because Louis was, he was a character and he always got in trouble. And I said, my grandparents would totally forbid my uncle
to hang out with a guy like Louis Zamperini.
Of course, no way. And I told my son, I said, if you were ever like Louis, I'd wring your neck, But my son was a very good son.
What would you say those years were like in between graduation in summer of 1938 all the way until 1941 when the war comes to the United States?
He was working at he worked at different produce markets, and I saw some information where it said he was the produce buyer, but I knew he worked at different produce markets. And they said when he heard about, you saw it in Citizen Tanouye, where he said when he heard about that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor,
on December 7th,
and then they said my uncle was sitting on the curb, and he said, "Look what they did."
What, to the best of your knowledge, what would you say the family's reaction was, other than Ted? I mean, what do you think the average Japanese American person in Torrance was thinking?
You mean the sons, the Niseis?
Yeah, the
Niseis?
The Niseis, yeah.
I would imagine that they were very confused or they were more for supporting the U.S. government. They had no idea of ever supporting the Japanese government. So to me, I was surprised that so many were picked up or questioned.
When December 7th happened, do you think any of them saw that it was going to lead to what it inevitably led to?
You mean the internment?
Which was internment.
Internment camp?
Yeah.
I highly doubt it. So as in Citizen Tanouye, I think Janet Payne mentions that the City of Torrance supported their Japanese American.
Yeah, the mayor, I believe, wanted to I think the mayor drafted it, and then the city council passed it, where they released and published a proclamation against the recommendation of both the U.S. government and then Attorney General of California, Earl Warren, because it was Earl Warren that gave the recommendation to President Roosevelt for Executive Order 9066. But yeah, I think Torrance, to my knowledge, Torrance is the only city anywhere in the United States that pushed back against internment, because the Japanese population of the city was 1 in 11 at the time, if I remember correctly. What was the family? I know Ted never went to camp, right?
Because he enlisted the day after.
Day after. I hear different sources say day after, day before.
See, I had day before because I always thought it was day before, but when I looked at my notes under my uncle, it was the day after. But he and his best friend Akira Shimatsu, they had signed up or registered themselves the year before in July 1st of 1941.
Registered for the draft?
Right. And they volunteered the day after EO, 66, was issued. So he was gone, and the day after Ted had volunteered was the day that my grandparents' house was surrounded by the police. So they were like at every entryway, under every window. And then they knocked down the door.
Literally. They kicked down the door.
Right, exactly. So then they took they were about to take my grandfather, and my grandmother told the second to the youngest son, go get your dad's coat, because it was, I guess, was it February or something like that? Yeah, February. Right. So she said, go get your father's coat. Otherwise, they would have taken him, and he was probably in his undershirt or something like that. So then they questioned him, and then there's that photo from the Herald Examiner where there's a line of men, and one of my friends who's a La Crescenta president of the Historical Society, he asked me, he goes, hey, Di, this last name is not spelled the same as yours, but he said, do you know who this is? And as soon as I saw it, I knew it was my grandfather. So he is, noted to be in the photo of people who were first rounded up.
Wow.
And only because he was associated with the Kendo school. My father told me that he had taught Kendo, but Robert Horstein, the director of Citizen Tanouyes, said that my grandfather was an administrator. So anybody that's related, especially martial arts,
martial arts, education, community leaders, those are the ones they went after first.
Exactly. So then later on, he went to Tuna Camp. So those were the first set of people, and the family visited him there at Tuna Camp.
So your grandfather went first, and then afterwards, the rest were arrested and interned.
Well, not arrested, but they were interned. So my father never mentioned, I guess, where they were first, round up. So my mother mentioned, they were at a racetrack, and but they went to different camps. So the Tanouyes were sent to Jerome, Arkansas.
Arkansas.
And then when that was closed to become a German POW camp, they were sent to Roar, Arkansas.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they were moved. I thought they spent the whole war in one.
No, because Jerome is one of the oldest camps, and they were sent to Roar. Because I would always hear my father mention Jerome and Roar, but I didn't know that it was two different camps.
So 9066 happens, internment happens. What would you say the family's experience was like in camp, and what was Ted's experience like? How often did the family see him? And I guess I should also ask, what was Ted doing for the year until the 442nd was activated?
Well, he was in basic training, and he just communicated with the family because they were interned, right, through letters. And so he would always, write the letters to the parents, and then the sister probably, read it to the parents, or she, translated it into Japanese. But my grandmother, she knew quite a bit of English. So my father said she went to night school to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
So we identified more with her because she could speak English. And so they didn't see Ted until he was going to be shipped out to Italy.
So there was a whole year when the family didn't
see Ted,
but they were communicating over
through
letters.
Through letters.
Have you read any of the letters? Do you know what was
I
being
saw
said or
I saw a
communicated?
few, and I think Robert Horstein mentions a few that was in Citizen Tanouyes. So it was, so Ted had told the family, I saw in one letter, I think Robert didn't include it, but he had told the family, I think it's best for you guys to go.
Ted told the family it's best for them to agree and comply.
Right, just go. He said, it'll be okay. He said the war won't last that long. He didn't tell them to fight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the Iseis were very reverent, and they never, they wouldn't be one of those no, yes people, Because I was like very irritated when I first heard about that. Like, why didn't they speak up?
I hear a lot of that from the Sansei generation, right? The Issei and Nisei are very quiet about internment. And then
exactly.
The Sansei go, I can't believe this happened to you guys.
Because we grew up in the 60s and 70s, where people rebelled and revolted or whatever, right? Yeah. And I told my father and mother, I said, why did you go? Why didn't you just say, we're citizens, we were born here. And my dad says, you just keep your mouth shut and you just do what they say. You don't fight back.
And that was just the culture.
Right, that's the culture. So, so I was surprised that there were a few who rebelled. And they were also sent to different places. But my family, I think, on the Tanouyes side, they're very, very law-abiding, very reverent. At least the Niseis, especially Niseis and Iseis.
What was the family's experience in camp in Arkansas? All of that. I know we've kind of talked about Ted's, but what was...
They don't, Japanese don't complain. Iseis and Niseis don't complain, but only the younger ones did. And I heard about it through on my mom's side. But my dad never complained. They never complained. And I just heard Jerome was one of the worst because it was one of the oldest camps.
I heard there was no insulation, right, in some of the quarters?
Yes, and I had heard, well, based on reading, what is it, the one, Farewell to Manzanar? The author mentions that there was a lot of gaps between the planks, so dust came through. And I just knew that, it was always, my mom just always said it was in godforsaken places, and it was always cold, or very dry, or very hot. Very extreme. But my grandparents never mentioned anything while I was growing up. They never complained. My aunt never complained.
But they never really even talked about their experience or what,
no,
what it
even
was
my
like.
father. Yeah, even my father, they never complained.
So the family is in camp for about 1.5 years before Ted ships out to Italy, right? Is that
so in
1944? And 442nd is created in February of 1943. Ted ships out in 1944 and joins the Allied campaign going through Italy.
But I think at the time they were combined with the 100th from Hawaii.
I think so it starts with the 100th Battalion, and this is to the best of my knowledge. I believe it starts with the 100th Battalion, which is the Hawaiian Japanese Americans, and then that serves under the 442nd. The 442nd regiment is kind of the overall unit, and then the battalion is part of the regiment, I believe.
So I don't know if you heard about the story where the officers, and I think they were white, they said, how are we going to fight this war if we have the two camps, of people, or two groups of Japanese Americans who can't even get along? right? Because the Hawaiians were very happy-go-lucky. They smoked, drank, gambled, right? And the Niseis were very quiet.
The mainlanders were
Yeah.
very stoic.
Yeah, very stoic, very quiet, because they were taught to behave and not do what, the Hawaiians did. And like I said, there's no way my uncle could have been even associated with Louis growing up.
This is according to Citizen Tanouye, which we talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
I don't know if Robert mentioned it in Citizen Tanouye, but so what the story was is that
Most of Ted's friends were Hawaiian, Japanese, American, right?
right, and I thought he learned from the Hawaiians how to play the ukulele, but I saw something in my notes saying he learned to play the ukulele from a white friend in high school.
Really?
Yeah, so I was really surprised by that because I had, I copy so much stuff that I find, and then I just put it in under my uncle's name.
If he becomes friends with Hawaiians, you would assume he learns
Yeah,
the
that's what
ukulele
I
from
always
them.
thought my whole life, because my father would always say that. He says, "Oh yeah, Ted learned how to play the ukulele," so I just figured he learned it from the Hawaiians. I never knew he learned it from a high school friend. But what I want to say about that incident was, so that officer had a busload of the Hawaiians and the Niseis go visit a camp. And so
And that was Jerome?
I don't know if it was Jerome or not. But they went to a camp, and whatever is closest to wherever their basic training was, like they were surprised to see guard towers, the Hawaiians especially, I think. And they were surprised that the place was surrounded by barbed wire. And then when they entered, they saw all the Niseis and Iseis, how they saved their...
Locked up.
Well, locked up in a way because they were surrounded by barbed wire, but they also saved their food so that they could make food for the visiting soldiers. So the soldiers that came were so humbled to see that. And
that internees would save their food to honor the coming soldiers.
Right. Well, that's the way, parents are. The Japanese parents are, it's always, you save your food for the kids or whatever, or your visitors, or guests. But they said on the way to that camp, the Hawaiians are, singing and laughing. But on the way home, it was very quiet. Because they got to see what...
Internment firsthand.
Or to see their people. Like you said, being behind barbed wire.
My family is, at least on my dad's side, right, Hawaiian, Japanese, American. Both my grandparents were from Hawaii. My grandpa from Kauai, and then my grandma from Honolulu. So they never experienced internment.
But there's supposed to be one on the island of Hawaii.
So
the Hawaiian Islands.
What I've heard, and this is from my grandparents, is at the time of Pearl Harbor, 2/3 of the Hawaiian Islands were Japanese American. So you can't arrest 2/3 of the island. The whole economy will shut down. So I think on Hawaii, the extent of it was civic leaders, teachers, educators, martial arts, as you mentioned. So yeah, my grandparents' experience of the war is very different than a mainland Nisei, for example. So yeah, I think that's very interesting. That kind of corroborates with my family history.
I'm sorry. So, so I was surprised because I thought, well, what did they do in Hawaii? Because there's so many Japanese there. And I didn't know that there was an internment camp, on site until I think someone told me that there was going to be an episode on one of the TV shows that showed the internment camp.
The Hawaiian internment camp. I heard they got shipped out to the mainland.
Really?
That's what I've heard. Yeah, the Hawaiian internment camp. This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Oh, I didn't know about that. And I don't understand how they separated certain families to go to certain camps.
Go to different camps.
Because my in-laws grew up in West LA. They were sent to Manzanar. My mother's family lived in Paris, the southern part of Perris, on in the southern part of California. They were sent to Gila, Arizona. My father's family came from Torrance. They were sent to Arkansas.
Did they try to keep immediate families together, or were those split up? I know your family, from what you've described, was kept together, but what is the experience of?
Well, I had heard that most families were kept together, but my mom's eldest sister, she was married, but I found out later, and no one ever said anything while I was growing up. They were in the same camp as the Tanouyes, but I don't know if they knew the Tanouyes.
Mm-hmm.
So they were married and they were living in San Pedro. So I don't know why.
And they got sent out to Jerome, Arkansas.
Right. No, I think they were probably in Roar, maybe Roar.
Mm-hmm.
They could have been in Jerome because that was the first one.
When did the family move from Jerome to Roar?
I don't have that date. It's whenever they closed Jerome and then they opened up
German
Roar.
POW. Okay. So Ted leaves for Europe in 1944. What letters were going back and forth? What was the exchange? I know you mentioned that Ted goes and visits the family one last time. What was that experience like for your grandfather, your father? Well,
he didn't spend that much time with them, I heard. He was visiting his friends, and then he left one of his platoon, or one of the other soldiers in the 442nd. He had him stay with the father for a while, I guess speak to them because he spoke Japanese. But at the end, my uncle wanted a family photo. So there's that famous photo that Robert also used in Citizen Tanouye.
Of all of them on the porch.
Right. They're all on the porch so you can see all the brothers and sisters. One sister. And my father has his head hanging down. And I said, well, how come you don't have your head up? And he said, because he said, Pop and Ted got in a fight. He said, Ted wanted to know, can he marry? And my grandfather said, no. You never know what's going to happen. So I think he means in case my uncle gets
war and
gets wounded or maimed, whatever, right? Or killed. He says, you never know. So he didn't want my uncle to marry. So Robert had asked me, do you know who that girl is? And I said, no, no one knows. So we have no idea who he had intended on marrying.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ted got shipped over to Italy, and he still communicated with the family through letters.
And that was July of 1944, right? When he gets sent to the front lines.
Yes, that was his third day, because my uncle was trained as a baker. So that's why in Citizen Tanouye, that soldier that was with my uncle when the landmine went off,
mm-hmm.
he said, Ted could have come home safe. He goes, he could have came home safe. He was, he said he was a baker, but he said Ted wanted to be.
He still wanted to be out there.
Right. So he said he became a tech sergeant, and it was his third day in the field that he took Hill 140.
Mm-hmm. Citizen Tanouye talks about this. Anyone who's a history nut for local history around Torrance knows the story. But just walk me through Hill 140, his deployment to Italy, and what exactly it was. How did your uncle earn the Medal of Honor?
Well, second to the youngest brother says that's Ted's mentality. What he did was, his men were pinned, by the Germans that were on the side, and there was no coverage on that Hill 140.
The Germans were on one side of the hill, and then the 442nd were on the other.
Well,
they were fighting for the top of the hill.
Well, the 442nd was at the base of the hill.
Was at the base.
So they were trying to.
Were the Germans at the top at the time?
There were some at the top,
okay.
Some on the other side, and some on the side. So my uncle took out the ones on the side, and they also were shooting at the men. So I think halfway up, my uncle ran out of ammunition, so he went back down.
Do you know what your uncle carried? Was it Was it a Thompson? Was it Garand?
I don't know what he had, but they said he grenaded certain ones that were in the trees, right, and some in the trenches. So I don't know. He went back for more ammunition, so he got it from his platoon mates. But my uncle did it all by himself, going up the hill. And then one soldier, a German soldier, launched a German grenade, and that's what hit my uncle's left arm. But my uncle kept on going. And like I mentioned, my uncle, the younger brother, he said, Ted, that's Ted. He said he has a John Wayne mentality.
Go for broke.
Right. He just did it, just kept on doing. And he accomplished his mission. Like as Robert says, it's his objective. He did it. That was his objective. So like in the movie, Rudy, I think it's Tokiwa, he mentions, I heard you took Hill 140. He goes, I was just doing my job. And he keeps, so that's the way the Tanouyes are. They're very, very humble. They don't sit on their laurels.
Yeah, stoic.
Yes, very stoic.
All about duty. All
yeah,
of those
he kept
things.
saying, that's my job. That I didn't do anything more than what my job was required. But Ted did it all by himself. And he didn't seek medical attention until, the hill was secured. His men were okay.
And the position was relieved by American.
And the Germans
American
on the
divisions.
other side were, gathered as POWs. So I think General Shinseki told me that in order to be a Medal of Honor recipient, there has to be fighting power from both sides. Because I questioned about why Louis Zamperini didn't get the Medal of Honor. But so my uncle only got the second highest.
At the time, yeah.
Right. And so some people were saying it was because he was Japanese American. So, and then one person, I think it was Terry Kuwahara, who was the secretary of the Ted Tanouye Memorial Foundation, she said, well, perhaps because the 442nd were the best. So, but my feeling was that they were expendable.
The 442nd.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then, as Robert mentions in Citizen Tanouye, my uncle's platoon was sent to France to rescue the lost battalion.
The 36th Texas Battalion, I believe, right?
I don't remember exactly, but
I think.
But they were, no one could help save them. And so there was more losses, I think over 200 losses for the 442nd to save 12 men. To save 12 men. Right. But my uncle was recuperating in the hospital from his injury from Hill 140.
When they were sent to France.
Right. Because remember, I think it was Rudy, he said, we were tired. We just did Hill 140. Here they're shipping us out to France. He said, why don't they send someone else who's fresh? So are they expendable or are they great?
So what the notes that I have here say that for Hill 140, right, July 7th, 1944 in Italy, Ted took out 2 machine gun nests, 3 MP40s, right, machine gun pistols, and a total of 22 enemy soldiers.
Yes, I saw that on your notes, and I said I didn't quite remember exactly.
I think that's also according to Citizen Tanouye.
Yeah, according to Citizen Tanouye. And I also, included that when I did a speech on my uncle's bravery.
When did he receive the Distinguished Service Cross? I know it was upgraded to the Medal of Honor in the year 2000.
I don't know exactly when, but it was afterwards. So
It was after the war.
Oh, no. I think during the war.
It was during the war.
Because he wrote back home and he told his mother that, it was after he died.
So it was awarded posthumously.
Yes. So he had written before saying he was going to get a Purple Heart. And I think the medal probably was in question at the time. But as in Citizen Tanouye, my grandmother was escorted right out of camp to receive the DSC. And then she was escorted back.
Did the family talk about receiving the medal, or What was the reaction to that?
I really don't know, but I know it was a great loss because, Ted was the favorite of the family. And
Eldest son.
the eldest son and the most responsible, right? And I think his sister might have taken it hard. So maybe she was close to Ted. I don't know, because she seems to like not really want to be involved or with anything, I guess, what happened with Ted. So I think she may have taken it the hardest.
How long was your uncle out of service for between his injuries on Hill 140?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
So I asked my mom's
After
caregiver.
a grenade.
Right. I asked my mom's caregiver, I said, could he have healed in 3 weeks? They just, and then they sent a letter to my grandmother telling her that they were discharging him and sending him out on another mission. So that was to clear the landmines of the Arno River.
And that was September 1st when he's mortally injured by the landmine and passes from his injuries, I think, 5 days later?
Yes, it was he was injured, but they said, like as they carried him out, he just said, go for broke. But
I've heard that story too.
Yes. And then he had excessive blood loss. So my mom's caregiver, she said, it could have easily been, attended to. And then he had visitors from his platoon, I guess, or friends, and they said they noticed that he was not passing urine, and that's a sign of, kidney failure. And I'm guessing, and I was wondering, why didn't he get a blood transfusion? But the Japanese were expendable, right? So he died from extreme blood loss.
On September 6th.
It was 5 days later.
5
yes,
days
yes,
later.
yes.
When did the family receive word? And what was the last communication they had with Ted?
Well, I'm sure they said they called it DOW, died of wounds. So I guess the family was, received that letter, and then my uncle was buried in Italy, and they exhumed the body, or his ashes, I don't know which, so that it could be shipped home. So they might have asked the family, do you want to leave it or do you want it? So both the Shimatsus and my paternal grandparents, wanted the body back. So they had a dual funeral and a dual burial.
And now it's the body is in Evergreen Cemetery in LA. What was the last communication the family had with Ted?
The letter for Mother's Day, it was on April 22nd, 1944. So I said it was ironic because April is the 4th month. 2 and 2 is 4. 1944, 4 and 4. So the Japanese have that what would you say? Against the number 4?
Yeah.
Because 4 means death.
I've heard of that.
Yes. And so I never realized that. I just knew that he had written an early Mother's Day card, and he just said, I will see you in church. And so it was ironic because they saw him,
At the last time they saw the body was
at the funeral. So that was the last that they heard from Ted. I don't know if he might have written to them while he was in the hospital. That I don't know. I don't know.
But that's the last communication that you're aware of.
Right, because he died in September, right? That September was the last major wound or injury, and he wrote to them in April, and Mother's Day is in May.
What would you say the legacy of this period in Japanese American history is? What would you say the legacy of your uncle is? Internment, the 442nd.
Well, his legacy was in their camp paper. It mentions that, local family's son, died.
It was in the Torrance paper?
No, the camp paper.
Oh, camp paper. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if it was shown in Citizen Tanouyes. I think so, where they showed that, they said local hero or whatever, or local family's son passed away. So his legacy, I thought it was well known, but as witnessed in all those city council meetings, no one seems to know. I am just so amazed because it was such a big thing, I thought, in 2000 when it was upgraded. And
he became the sole Medal of Honor recipient.
Right, and he's the sole, till this day, he's the only one. There's another Medal of Honor recipient, but he grew up in L.A. So to me, Ted is still the sole recipient.
Born and raised.
Right, born and raised in the City of Torrance. So they named the armory after my uncle initially. Then the high school, Torrance High, decided to do something to commemorate my uncle. So they said they were even just going to put a brass plate on a bench in the school, and they started fundraising. And I heard about it in the Lighthouse paper, where they were saying that they were soliciting funds, and so I wrote to them and saying that I was the
you were
first,
the niece,
right? I'm his niece and the
grandchild.
first grandchild, and I told about all the brothers and sisters and who they were and their names, and so they said that Gail Morgan read and it was on these big Post-its, and she read the letters, my notes, and then they said she cried. And so they contacted me, and so then they said I could come and be a guest of their foundation. So I went every week, even though my cousin's husband, my cousin-in-law was supposed to have been designated as a family representative. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even know that the City of Torrance or the Torrance High Alumni Association or the Ted Tanouye Memorial Foundation was even looking for any members of the family, because I was the only one that seemed to be so interested in it. So I just...
And clearly you still are. I mean,
yes,
you're the one who came to speak.
Right. So anything on my uncle or Louis, I'm there. So so then I heard that the members said that it really didn't take off until I started attending.
The association.
The foundation.
The Ted Tanouye Foundation.
Yeah. And that was initially was created, I think, just for doing something in Ted's honor. Mm-hmm. And so they did, the monument. But I think the reason was because someone said, because of what my work entailed is we're goal oriented and we always make sure we meet our goal. So I just always thought, and I told them the history, and I told them, whatever I could to help push them forward. And then I had a friend who was my coworker. He approached our public relations department, and he said, hey, Diane's a longstanding employee. Can American Honda donate any money? So they did, but it was very
memorial.
Right, but it was very minimal compared to what Toyota was. They donated a lot of money. So,
what was the family's reaction like when it was heard that your uncle would be upgraded to the Medal of Honor?
I don't know. No one ever said anything.
Really?
I'm the only one, I think, and my cousin Tracy are the only ones that got so excited, I think. Mm-hmm. But see, Tracy, like I said, she was probably out of the country, so she probably didn't hear firsthand. But I was really, and then when you mention Medal of Honor to people who are in the service, I had one person who was formerly in the Navy, and he said, you have to almost die or die trying to get that.
I've heard that commonly said, yeah.
And then my brother said he mentioned it to one of his customers or something at the time, and he said the guy just stood up and saluted my brother just for being related to a Medal of Honor recipient.
I think there's only 3,000 in the country's history.
That I don't know.
Which is, I've heard either 3,000, 3,500, somewhere in those lines. And I mean, it is crazy to have received one or be related to someone who's received one. If, you know, the number is 3,000 since, I think, the Civil War was when they started handing them out.
I think maybe John may have mentioned it, like the numbers, because he went to that, the Hall of Heroes, was that
Hall
what
of
it's called?
Heroes in Washington,
in
D.C.
D.C.,
Okay.
right. So it wasn't there when I used to visit D.C., so I'm not aware of it. Otherwise, I would have made sure I went. And I think they were going to do something similar as part of JANM, but I don't know if they've ever done that.
With all the Nisei veterans.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like the Hall of Medal of Honor recipients.
I'm surprised that you were the only one that got interested or excited when this happened.
I don't know. Like I said, the Tanouyes are
very quiet,
very
very
quiet,
stoic.
very humble, and you don't make a scene. But my father had already passed,
Okay.
so he couldn't. And he's the type too that he wouldn't probably make a big deal out of it. And I think too, like as I mentioned to you, that if you can meet somebody, living or dead, and I said I would love to meet my Uncle Ted. But he would probably downplay it because he's very, Tanouyes are very quiet and very humble. Like even in Citizen Tanouye, he told Rudy, I was just doing my job. He said, hey, I heard you took Kill 140. I was just doing my job. But I would just love to talk to him.
What made you start getting interested? Was it, or in your uncle's story, was it when the Medal of Honor was upgraded, or what? Because from what you've described to me, your family didn't really talk about it too much.
No.
So clearly you had to have been interested to do all the research.
Well, I love history, and I love, I was very proud of my uncle. I was very proud of being a Japanese. Always. I've always been proud of being Japanese. When I was growing up, we didn't say, oh, I'm Japanese American. We just said we were always Japanese. And because there was more of us when I was growing up, we were very proud of. You grew up in
Torrance, Gardena area.
Gardena. So of course we were very proud of the fact that we were, Japanese. So I was always just proud of him. And so I learned more about him probably when it was the upgrade. And, whenever I saw anything online, I would always copy everything and just save that information. And so now I'm getting photos from my cousin because her parents had passed away, the last living one. And she's giving me the photos. And so I'm just saying, the other photos I've never seen before. So her father had it.
Of the Issei and Nisei generation.
Right. But my father just said that Ted was always, the one that was the leader of the family. And so, my father never had anything bad to say about Ted. He never said he got in trouble by Ted. I just heard my father got in trouble by his father, but he never said, Ted warned him or Ted, reprimanded him. My father never said. He just said Ted and the youngest were the best. But they were all, to me, all the brothers were very commendable.
What would you say the legacy of the 442nd is? I mean, you mentioned being proud of being Japanese, being interested in history. The 442nd is the most decorated unit in all of American history. Your uncle being one of the Medal of Honor recipients. What would you say their legacy is today?
Well, their legacy
for the Japanese American community, but more broadly speaking, Asian America as well.
Right, because it was mostly, Japanese Americans.
It was all Japanese Americans.
Yeah, and they were the most decorated, and I think almost every one of them had a Purple Heart.
Most Purple Hearts received.
Right.
I don't know about every single one of them, but from what I've heard, most Purple Hearts received of any regimental combat team.
Right, because some were in the 442nd, but they didn't see combat. so they didn't get one, a Purple Heart. But my uncle received 2 Purple Hearts. So I guess one was for before Hill 140, and the other one was for the landmine explosion. But their legacy, like there's still, isn't there a Boy Scout in East LA that they're called 442nd?
Are there?
I think so.
I know they've kept the regiment active still, more for ceremonious purposes. But that's, and then of course there's the Go for Broke Foundation, but past that I wouldn't know.
Yes. So there's certain people, probably my generation, the Nisei generation, Sansei generation, who have relatives that were in the 442nd. But I would think their legacy, I would have hoped would have continued on, but I think it's already losing in my son's generation. He's Gosei. So, or no, he's considered
Yonsei, right?
He's
fourth generation.
Yeah, he's the kind of like in the older part of the Yonseis. Yes, so I'm just surprised that it's diminishing. That no one remembers, or maybe no one is interested. But my son, his interests, he teaches social studies or social science, I guess it's called, history at his school. So his forte is, World War II. And he said, because I always bombarded him, always with my uncle and always with Louis Zamperini. So he said that's his area of expertise. And he's also delved into more things that I don't even know about, but it's so interesting. But, that's his favorite part of history, U.S. history.
What do you think the 442nd means in the grand scheme of American history? Why is it important to preserve this tradition? Not just because, for the Japanese American community, but I guess what can any American learn from their legacy?
Well, there was to me, is because the members were from, basically their family was from another country. But they never thought to, stand up for the mother country. They were all for the U.S. Like my grandfather, when he came over, he applied for World War I, and he was rejected.
Oh, so your grandfather tried to serve
World War I.
1917, 1918. Okay, that I did not know.
Yes.
So your family has a long line of military service then.
Well, he didn't do, he was
He
rejected.
tried.
He tried, but he was rejected.
Your eldest uncle served World War II, and then I think you said second youngest, Yuki, right?
Well, the second youngest was Isao. He and Yuki both were in the Korean War. And I didn't know that Isao was in the Korean War. He just said where he was stationed, he asked his commanding officer, can I visit my younger brother? He's somewhere here, nearby in Korea. And they denied it to him. And then when Yuki was killed on a reconnaissance mission, my uncle said he was allowed to escort the body home.
Isao.
Right. And he said, and that too also was kind of ironic, because Yuki told his, brother above him, Isao, I will beat you home. But he beat him home because he died. So I never knew that second uncle, served in the Korean War.
How'd you learn about it? Just through?
Well, when he told me that, he said that he.
When you heard the story of.
Well, we were gathered to regarding the ceremony for the monument at Torrance High. So the foundation was gathered, and we were going over the events, and my uncle was, I guess there was a lull somewhere, and he just told me the story. He said, that he wanted to see Yuki while he was in Korea, and they said no. And then he said, but when my uncle was found dead in a field, and, he said, I was allowed to escort his body home. So he said, I had my arm around the sarcophagus. And so that was the first time I had heard or knew that he was even in the Korean War.
Wow. Lots of veterans. Lots.
Well, it is, and it's also it just everything is just so ironic. You know, like Ted's letter.
Yeah. Next time I'll see you is at church,
Yeah,
and then
and
I'll race you home.
and what Yuki said. You know, I'll beat you home, and it's sad but ironic, and I don't think the family were superstitious, because like I didn't realize until I was looking over my notes again, you know, to you that the letter from the mother to the mother, and Robert doesn't mention it, I don't think, in Citizen Tanouye, that it was in April 22nd, 1944. And then it hit me, you know, 444, 4, you know. But they never said anything. And maybe I'm the only one that noticed. I don't know. You know, maybe I'm the only one that cares. I don't know.
That can point out or that saw the pattern.
Right. The irony of everything, you know.
But it does sound like, based on Ted's last letter, that the whole family went to church together, right?
Yes, but they, you know, they went to, and then I was surprised because they went to the Buddhist church. So I guess that's what they just considered it. They just said church, and then at the end I was surprised because he said, "God bless you," and I said, "Well, I thought they were all Buddhists." So initially, on Ted's headstone,
I think when I went to go visit,
you saw the marker?
headstone, it's a Buddhist wheel, right?
Exactly.
I don't know what the correct term for it is, but yeah, it's a Buddhist marker.
Yeah, it was so that's what I mentioned when they were going to do the monument, and I guess Gail wanted something done at, you know, and I said they were raised Buddhist. But I said, you know, I would like, you know, a friend of mine to do like the invocation or something like that. But then they added the MOH, I think, on the marker. You saw it, right?
Medal of Honor.
Right. And then that is, I think it's done free of charge by the government. So there's been like, I saw the original headstone photo. So I think there must have been maybe 3, because at first it was more bare. Then they added, you know, the Buddhists, and then afterwards the Medal of Honor. But what I was surprised about is I always had down, because of the marker, because I would always take photos, even though I heard too that's bad luck. You're not supposed to take photos
Of the headstone?
Yes.
Really?
I read that. I forgot where I read that. And I said,
is that a Japanese superstition?
I can't remember which, but they said, that's bad luck. And I said, every year when I would go for Memorial Day, I would always take a picture of his headstone. You know, because like, you know, towards the end, they started having the flag, and then they would have a little stand for the Medal of Honor recipients. So I always took a photo every year. Yeah, and so it says November 15th. And then I saw Ted's license, driver's license, and his chauffeur license, and Ted says November 14th. So I think if we ever have it redone, the marker, we would have to, you know, correct it to the 14th rather than the 15th.
His birthday.
So I don't know why the U.S. government has him down as the 15th.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, so I have no idea, like, if it was given to them or that's what they have on record. But all of the records that I've seen that, you know, my uncle saved, and the second to the youngest brother had in his possession, Ted wrote down November 14th. You know, and so I'm assuming that's correct.
Yeah, you would think he knows his own birthday. Right?
But, you know, my mom, too, she was told her birthday was the 26th of December, so that's what she was led to believe, and found out her birthday was really 27th in the year 26. I mean, because, you know, Japanese have year first, then month and day, I think.
Oh, that's odd. So it's all off by one day.
So she, all her life, she was led to believe it was the 26th, but it was actually, when she received a copy of her birth certificate, it said it was the 27th.
Do you have any last things you'd like to say about Ted? Any stories that people haven't heard? Your thoughts on, you know, internment, the 442nd?
Well, the internment, you know, like Ted was not in
Yeah.
the internment. He only visited the family once. And so so that's what I was surprised about. In the traveling exhibit, Only the Oaks Remain,
Mm-hmm.
that I was wondering why my uncle was, he had, there was an interactive exhibit of
Oh,
part
really?
of it, right?
Okay.
And I wouldn't have known about it except for Nancy told me, she said, "Oh, do you want to see?" And she led me through the exhibit. And otherwise, I probably would have bypassed it. So it was interactive digital. So, she just, had my grandfather's name and had my uncle's name and maybe my uncle's face or something like that. So she just pushed these buttons, and then I got to see all these photos I've never seen before. But she was one of the best friends of my uncle's eldest daughter. So I think that's why my uncle released the photos to her. So she has a lot of photos too. But so I was mentioning to my coworker, who was, like I said, the president of his historical society, and I said, "So why is my uncle in this exhibit? Because it's supposed to be on tuna camp." And he said, "Because," he said, "your uncle received, the DSC, and your uncle became a Medal of Honor recipient. So here his parents or his father, was picked up, sent to tuna camp, and he has a son who fought for the U.S., died for
The
the
same
U.S.
government
Right,
that put them in the camps.
exactly." And he said, and he's famous for what he did, right? Having his parents interned, yet he fought for the government, and he gave his life for them. And then so it was like an eye opener for me, because I kept thinking, "Oh, why is Ted included in this exhibit?"
Do you think that's symbolic in any way?
Yes. So it's, it was an eye opener, because I didn't think it would have been related, but then because Nancy was doing the photography for it, she was able to, this was before, she was able to enter the armory, the Torrance Armory, and she said Ted's uniform was in there, behind, in a glass case. And she said
Does Janum have all of that now, or where?
No. Well, the uniform is at the armory.
Oh, okay.
So she said they offered to open up the glass so that it wouldn't, reflect. And so she said they opened up the glass case, and she took photos of the uniform. So when I mentioned it to my cousin, the younger daughter, and she said, "I had no idea that Ted's uniform was at the armory." But see, like now, I think it was probably after the Asian hate thing that was going on, the COVID, that they put up the black gating, or, so you might have to make an appointment if you want to visit.
The armory.
Right, the armory. But before, you could just walk in.
Walk in and
Right.
see the uniform.
So she took photos of the uniform. And I think I stole the photos, but it might be on a drive that I would have to use another device to get to it. Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe my uncle had photos of his uniform from before. But, we have a case of his medals and the Medal of Honor.
Of course.
Yeah.
Have to.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
We really
My pleasure.
appreciate having you on. It was great hearing all the different stories, and
And I hope an eye opener.
You're the first guest that I think I've spoken face to face with. We've done other podcasts and things like that, but this is the first one where I feel like you're speaking, and I'm just, wow, I don't even know what to say to this.
Oh.
It feels, your uncle gave his life for the country, so it's a very deep topic, and I feel like I can't even comprehend. I have nothing to say to it, is kind of how I feel.
Oh, because I said, you mentioned anything about Louis and my uncle, and you can't shut me up. And so, like, even when we were partying the first time we met, I'm still trying to tell you more and more stuff as we're partying our ways. But, and I really studied, Louis, and I knew Louis, and we had a really, good relationship for about 10 years, because I met him at the groundbreaking of the monument. And So if I hear anybody say anything, I just jump
You
up
just
if I jump up if I know it's not right. Because I said,
someone has to keep everything in order.
well, I said, I personally know Louis Zamperini. I said, that's not true. And I think I didn't know my uncle, but I learned a lot by, reading about him. And usually it was pretty basic, information that was from like Go for Broke Foundation. But more and more seems to be coming out. And more I see in photos that I didn't know about. Because there was photos of the family when, as it grew. And so I know exactly, the eldest one was Ted, and I know the second one was my father.
We appreciate you sharing all of that with us.
You're
again,
welcome.
I really don't know what to say.
I was going to say
except thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. And I said, anytime, you have any questions regarding, my Uncle Ted, just let me know. And I would just talk your ear off. You know that.
Diane Tanouye, thank you.
You're most welcome.